Welcome to the Retrospect podcast, a show where people come together from different walks of life and discuss a topic from their generation's perspective. As always, my name is Ian, and I am joined by Stoney.
Hello.
And Jason.
Hello, everyone.
How's everyone's week been so far?
Well, it's been pretty good. I'm happy right now because I'm drinking my
Your investment?
super expensive coffee that I was somehow this idea lodged in my brain to spend a lot of money on a pound of coffee or so. And so I was very curious about how this would taste. And I will say A+.
Really?
Yes, I enjoyed it. I was really worried about whether I was going to be very upset or very happy. With spending the amount of money I did for this coffee. But this was somewhat of a bucket list thing. I can say now that I've had the most expensive cup of coffee in the world.
Mm-hmm.
We have a great studio here, and Ian is the provider of a lot of the studio, and we appreciate him. And he offered up a Starbucks Cafe Verona, which up until recently was one of my favorite cups of coffee.
Right.
And our Poo-Poo coffee has now taken over. We did a side-by-side comparison, and it is kind of a bucket list thing. And thank you, Jason, for sharing your bucket list with us and our listeners.
Thank you very much.
Because you said some people were already texting you, wanting to know have we done the episode yet.
Yeah.
And I've had a couple people ask me, what's going on with the Poo-Poo coffee? What's going on with the Poo-Poo coffee? And it's actually a very unique experience to put those two things. You want to have expectations,
Of course.
and you're almost afraid to be let down.
Of course.
You know, what's the old adage? Don't meet your idols because they're going to let you down every single time. But this coffee kind of didn't let us down. We're all very happy about it.
Yeah. It does. It is very. I can tell just personally from my work in the past. It tastes like it's a, and I don't mean this in the sense that you probably think it does. This tastes like a really fresh coffee bean, not like as in they didn't clean it off or anything, but like as in you can tell the difference between coffee beans or grounds that may feel old, or as opposed to like freshly ground, like really good beans. Like I was saying before, there's like fundamentals besides water and portion, all that kind of stuff. Like the freshness is a big proponent, and I think not to say that this isn't good coffee, but like I think a lot of it that really tells the difference between like the comparison that we made is the fact that this is as fresh as it is. And you can taste it, and it's because there's so much complexity and liveliness in it.
Well, it's on the packaging, and the packaging is where did this come from? Jason?
Well, I ordered it from a company called Volcania, I believe is the name of the company. One
of the things that's on the packages, and I learned a lot of this with my cigars, is the soil that things are grown in has a lot to do with it. And these coffee beans are grown on volcanic soil.
That's correct.
And that's got to add some unique flavor to it, along with the digestive enzymes of the what animal?
Civet.
Civet,
what it's called,
that eats the beans and then poops them out.
Yeah, right.
And then this company actually, Jason did a lot of research on, and they do the harvesting in the most natural way. These civets aren't force fed. They aren't. And Ian brought this up in the past episode, the Coffee Master episode.
Right.
That if you don't do it naturally, could that change the complexion of the coffee?
Right.
And Jason did a lot of research and found the best
even
coffee,
if
I think,
Right. Even if it doesn't change like some of the flavors, I mean, which I'd imagine it does, having a balanced diet for that animal probably does have a lot to do with it.
I think it does.
But it also, for me, it makes me uncomfortable to try and feed into a system that is like abusing animals in any way. I may not be the best person in the world. I eat meat. I'm not saying, but I mean, I do try my best in certain areas.
Well,
and I feel like feeding so much money into a business that is notoriously known for that kind of stuff.
I don't think eating meat makes anyone a bad person.
Right.
Magnus has a teacher at his school that is a vegan, and she's always browbeating the students about eating meat. And I told him the next time she starts with that, you look that teacher in the eye and you say that my mom and stepdad only feed me grass-fed beef.
Right.
So the cow is vegan. So I'm eating a vegan cow, and that counts. So leave me alone.
That there's a lot of people going to vegan now. I mean, that
right.
seems to be a fad, and I understand not wanting to eat meat,
right.
and because there are supposedly some health benefits to eating vegan, but I've also seen some studies where eating meat's good too. Depends if it's lean beef, not the fatty stuff.
Well, we aren't cows. We aren't herbivores. We aren't designed to eat grass.
Right.
So our bodies are designed to eat a balanced diet. So I'm not saying eat meat every day.
Right.
Right. You have to
moderate everything in moderation.
The point that I was making with that is like I may help feed a system that is probably corrupt in some way. The point that I was making is like I feel like buying meat at your grocery store or local butcher is probably different than like feeding a lot of money into like a really expensive trade that is like notoriously known for abusing animals in a way. It's like that made me feel uncomfortable in a way.
Milk-fed veal.
Right, yeah. Right, exactly.
I don't do that. I don't eat veal.
Right.
Because I know how it's made.
That's what I'm saying. It's like I may not be a vegan, I may not be a vegetarian even, but like I do have some convictions, and that was one for me that was like
right.
But the point that I was making, until Jason was able to find this company that has like a good track record of like, okay, that is something that we can put our mind or his money behind if he wanted to really
and our airtime.
Exactly. I'm okay. I gave him my good graces of like, this does seem like a good company that if you wanted to do this and you want to try and do something crazy and check a bucket list item, this is the one that I would go.
So as the resident coffee expert, because I'm far from an expert when it comes to coffee, what is your honest kind of opinion on this coffee? Is this something that you would be willing to spend money on to buy?
I get that's hard for me. I just now am an owner of an espresso machine, and I'm trying some new beans, and I'm trying new stuff and different techniques. Would I regularly buy this? Probably not. But would
you splurge on it like a great scotch or whiskey or something? Would you do it something
possibly
like that?
I think there's other coffees like we're talking about getting a different one from the same company.
Right. I think I looked at it as a Jamaican Blue Mountain. It seems to be that they harvest those beans at the same altitude, I think, as the Kopi Luwak. I think it's 30,000 feet.
I believe it. The thing is, like that feels like something more that I would kind of splurge on, whereas this may be a little out of my.
This is expensive.
This feels like.
I'll tell you, I spent $400.
This feels like more of that like exotic, like the law of diminishing returns. I'm pretty sure for the amount of money that the Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee is, I'm pretty sure we can get something that is pretty accurate to this that I would feel like I could have like on a regular occasion, like a nice scotch. I could pull out and go like, this is some good coffee. Would I regularly go to this? This may be for those like, for moments like this where we want to have like something really nice and have a really good strong moment for all of us, and we're all having this amazing cup of coffee together. And
it's like I love Blue Label, Johnny Walker Blue Label, but I can't spend that every week.
Right.
But I will occasionally pop the wallet out and, maybe once, twice a year, grab me a bottle of Blue Label. This coffee's kind of the same way. I'm really enjoying this coffee. Now, I wouldn't do it often, but occasionally, especially since we have the coffee master here to show us how to do it right.
Yep.
And the perfect temperature and the water and absolutely everything. I know I can't ruin that coffee now.
Right.
So, okay, folks, how is our Poo-Poo coffee? I give it a 9.5 to 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's to me, it's as I said, A+ for me. I would venture to say it's at a minimum of a 9 for me. I'm really enjoying it.
Coffee master.
I would give it the same. I give it a 9 out of 10. It's good stuff. I mean, there's obviously things that it may not be my favorite out of the whole world, but man, is it good?
Damn,
though.
It's a good cup of coffee.
But you could say you had a cup of the most expensive cup of coffee in the world.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
And it is very complex. It has its own. character, I feel like, to it in a way. Where I think that's the part that's hard to describe and put into words. They call me coffee master, but I don't think I'm actually like I wouldn't say I'm like a sommelier of like coffee in a way. Like I can't sit here and tell you all these like notes of all this different stuff. I can a little bit, but the difference between the previous cup that we had and this one, you can feel the character in this one, the complexity, the diversity of all the different stuff going into it. Whereas the other one that we were tasting, not to say that it's bad, it's just more affordable, and it feels more one-noted, kind of dull in a way.
One of the things we talk about on this podcast is experiences, and the other coffee is a great cup of coffee.
It is.
No doubt,
it's a fantastic
cup
of coffee,
cup too.
but it's a cup of coffee.
Right.
This Kopi Luwak is more what we talk about on this podcast as an experience.
Right.
It's a bucket list experience. It's a friendship experience. We got to do something together, and we got to take our listeners with us.
Right.
And that's what I really like about that.
Yeah.
It's an experience. It's unique. It's a very unique cup of coffee. It has some unique tones in it. Ian looked like what's that thing where the where people start blurting out words and stuff? He was like floral, donutty. He was just he was putting out all these words, and it was awesome to watch him experience this cup of coffee, because you could see there was going to be some certain expectations that we all had.
Right.
And I think we were all fairly blown away by it.
Yeah.
And satisfied.
I am. Thank you again.
Yes.
You're welcome.
For supplying.
I love sharing sharing these kind of things with my friends, and I'm glad we all were able to enjoy it.
I got to check off something on my bucket list that
right.
I didn't even know was on my bucket list.
And guess
but I got
what?
to write it in there and check it off.
And we could have some next week.
Mm-hmm. We hear a lot of things that we want to hear sometimes, but did I hear you say you were leaving this at the studio?
Yes, I actually am.
Ian has this special little vacuum, little pumpy thing. That
little chamber,
chamber.
It's going to be kind of
leaving it here in the studio.
So-called coffee of the podcast, so to speak. So,
well, you like the thing is,
we'll keep drinking it until we've exhausted it.
So, what was the name of the company again?
Volcania, I believe.
Okay, so Volcania Kopi Luwak, if you would like to sponsor us, or Johnny Walker Blue Label, if you would like to sponsor us, please feel free to get in touch with us.
Yeah,
I think it's Volcanica.
Volcanica, that's it.
Yes.
Okay,
awesome.
There
Volcanica Coffee Company.
Yep. Yep, there's the Jamaican Blue Mountain.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's awesome. So if either one of you would like to sponsor the podcast.
See this right here? That's the French press we actually made. That's funny. There's a little advertisement on the side of it, a little featured product, and it's the same exact French press that we made the coffee in today.
Okay, kind of scroll down a bit.
Let's see. There's a whole bunch of stuff.
It's the Peaberry one. That's the one I was looking at.
Okay. Well, they have some fantastic packaging, don't they?
Oh, they do. I mean, at this point,
the amount of
well, sure, for the amount of money,
if you're going to be spending
right?
that kind of money, the packaging better be kind of jump out and grab you a little bit.
You better make it in a pretty box. Okay, so what we really have squeezed all the coffee out of this bean, haven't we?
Right.
Yeah, we have.
So
what else are we talking about today?
One of the things in our whiteboard and our pre-show and post-show is that we want to venture out to some new topics and new conversations.
Right.
And so we asked Jason if he would like to come up with something. So Jason's going to take the lead in this episode and wow us with a new subject.
Well, I was thinking about what sort of topics that we can talk about, and I thought maybe we could spotlight some historical figure that had some bit of nuance to his life, maybe kind of a little bit of strangeness there, and I don't want to focus on people that is so well known, like people like Abraham Lincoln or George Washington, or those kind of personalities, which it's kind of taught in every history book. Maybe
some of the obscura type stuff.
Exactly. So I actually read about this guy in a book many years ago, actually, and for whatever reason, this guy just keeps coming up.
So can I interject here that we decided to call this episode the Poo-Poo coffee and brownie episode.
Okay.
And there's a reason that we know what the Poo-Poo coffee title is, but now here is the brownie part of the title.
Yes, it's we're going to talk about a gentleman by the name of Arthur Edward Stilwell. And they've got some stuff out there on him on the web, but I thought it would be interesting for those of our listeners who have heard nothing about this guy.
Right.
And so I thought it would be interesting to talk about him. So I have a few things about him that that I thought were very interesting. But just to kind of start off with him, he was born on October 21st, 1859, and he died on September 29th, 1928.
He was also born in Rochester, New York.
That is correct.
And he invented things. He was an author, but one of the things that he was known for was the Kansas City early railroad. The Kansas City Central, he started the pre-company to that. And one of the things that he's famous for is the companies that he started laid over 2,500 miles of railroad.
A true industrialist.
Yes, true.
Same. It put him in the same stratosphere, like with the Vanderbilts and the Rothschilds and all those.
What's that same time frame where it's like there's so much?
Yeah, that late
yes.
1800s, early 1900s when really industrialization of our country started, and so he's one of the giants.
Right.
So he was, he was born in Rochester, New York. He married Jeannie Wood. It was actually kind of mysterious how that even happened, but he married Jeannie Wood. They had no children.
Okay.
But shortly after they got married, he moved from New York to Kansas City, where he met Jeannie. And then they eventually moved to Chicago, where he started to sell insurance with the Travelers Insurance Company.
Oh, gosh.
So, he was an insurance salesman.
Yeah, I love that.
He actually was the inventor of the coupon annuity life insurance policy, which is kind of the precursor to what we call annuities today.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. He is credited as being the inventor of that sort of...
But he also invented, in the rail system, the traveling, that there were no pamphlets to show the times and things like that. So he came out with a process to show a page of times, but also sold ads.
Yep.
On these on these pamphlets.
That's how he generated his money. He started buying up real estate from that.
Right. And part of that real estate was for the railroads.
Yes. He also, one of the other famous things he designed was called the Stilwell Oyster Car.
Yes.
Wait, so believe it or not, there was an impetus back then that how are we going to transport live oysters and keep them fresh? And prior to this invention, if a train would crash, and derail, if that would make news,
right?
If the oysters were lost, because that's just how valuable they were considered back
then.
then.
Rich people wanted their oysters.
Yeah, they wanted their oysters.
Why? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't like oysters at all.
Yeah, well, I'm not a big oyster eater either.
Unpopular opinion.
I'm just not. Occasionally I'll eat them like charbroiled.
I've had them in like a gumbo, and I was like, this isn't awful, but it's not my favorite.
I'm not.
I like the charbroiled oysters, yeah.
I either eat them fried or charbroiled, but I used to eat them raw.
Really?
When I was younger, yeah.
Okay.
But unfortunately, I had a relative that came down with hepatitis from eating raw oysters.
Stop it.
And almost died from it. And I after that, it scared me from ever eating raw oysters again. I've never done it, and it's probably been over 30 years. So
yikes.
Yeah. I'm not big on raw oysters, but there are a lot of people who do like raw oysters, and this invention actually allowed the transport of these oysters. And the funny thing is, they said the oysters were loaded into 6 insulated tanks and filled with seawater, and then they would unload them from chutes on the side.
Wow.
So, which was something new.
You want to talk about industrialization, imagine.
But not only did he come from the industrial age,
yeah,
but he was also from the spiritualist age.
Yes. He was a Christian scientist.
He was an interesting person, but he considered himself to be a medium of sorts. And as he's laying these inventions out and laying all this track down, he also started over 40 towns and cities through all of this. And he attributes where to lay the track to speaking to fairies or brownies.
Correct.
And they're the ones who helped him, he says, to lay all this out and where to plant it, how to plant it, and how to do it.
Yeah, the railroad that he actually is known for was the Kansas City, Pittsburgh, and Gulf Railroad.
Right. Which became Kansas City.
Which became the Kansas City Southern Railroad. And
after he was pushed out
yes,
by his investors.
Well, he was, and believe it or not, he was pushed out over an unpaid printing bill.
Yes.
Of $44. Can you believe being thrown out of your company over?
Do we happen to know? Do we have to know
unpaid printing bill of $44?
Do you know what year that took place in?
That would have been, I think. I don't know off the top of my head.
Let's just say 1900.
It was somewhere in that time frame.
I'm just curious.
It was the late 1800s. Maybe in the 1890s.
I want to get like a reference here for, let's see. No, not that. Here we go. That would have been $1,500 in today's money.
$1,500.
Yeah, technically. It just was. I was going to put in.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
Think about,
because you were saying $44, and I was like, if we're talking like late 1800s, like early 1900s.
That's actually when money was worth
money. Right. It was worth the money.
Right.
Because I was thinking, you're right. If you have an outstanding bill for give or take $1,500, it's a little more.
Everything was backed by gold.
Right. You're right. You're right. That's a little something more I can understand someone losing a job for if you had, $1,554 outstanding balance of something. I'm pretty sure someone would get upset with that.
But Stoney mentions about his strange friends that he consulted.
Right.
Now, later in his life, he would kind of come back and say they were hunches. But for many years prior to that, he said they were brownies or fairies, which I find interesting. Because I just find someone of his stature that seemed to consult these mysterious beings, and they ended up being right.
Yeah.
Right. Most of the time. So now, one example was he wanted, when he was in Kansas City, he wanted to connect Kansas City to the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh, really?
Yes. So he started buying up land and rail lines and started making his way down south. And eventually he wanted to terminate this line in Port Arthur, or what would become Port Arthur. Matter of fact, Port Arthur is named
for him.
Named after him.
And Stilwell, Oklahoma.
And so this was about, I think, 1897. And his fairy or brownie friends urges him not to go to Galveston, Texas.
Yeah.
That he had a vision that the city would be destroyed. Well, of course, 3 years beforehand, he don't know what's going on. Well,
right.
Guess what happens in 1900? The Galveston hurricane that is still to this day the costliest hurricane in U.S. history in terms of human life. I believe over 6,000 people died.
Wow.
In that hurricane. So I find it interesting that a guy who was building all these rail lines that these mysterious beings would steer him clear of that, which kind of indicates to me that there's something going on with that.
The thing 3 years in advance.
Yeah.
The thing that I find interesting is I heard this from some church friends, and they said that you can tell who a good prophet is by how by what actually comes true. I was say, if you have a prophet that none of their predictions come true, obviously it's a bad prophet.
Well, why hasn't any of these fortune tellers, why don't you see the news, headline, fortune teller wins the lottery?
Oh, because...
I mean, if you could tell a fortune, give us some numbers, right?
Yeah, give me some numbers. I'd like to win the lottery. I mean... Isn't
it back over $1 billion right now?
Last time I saw it was $1.1 billion.
Jeez.
Well, you think about if you won that, and of course, you take half of that, so
then pay taxes.
So you're looking at $500 to $600 million. You're taking out. Then you take federal taxes out of that, and
that's crazy.
But that's how. But the thing is,
I mean, it's still a lot of money.
Somebody's going to win that. Mm-hmm. Someone's life is fixing to be radically altered.
That's crazy.
I just wish it would be me.
Yikes.
But it's funny, these voices actually started when he was 15 years old. And they would come, he would hear them at night. And as he got older, they became more and more pronounced where it actually would intrude it in his conscious mind. So...
That's crazy.
Yeah, at 26, 26 years old, these voices urged him, talking about the rail line to Galveston.
Right.
That's when they start urging him to start building the line to the Gulf of Mexico. So this guy at 26 years old is doing this.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine a 26-year-old doing that today?
I'm 20. I'm about to be 29 right now. So it's like, it's crazy to think
That's right.
I'm just going to build a railroad to...
Exactly. To go out there,
right.
Raise the capital, talk with all the movers and shakers that you would need to be able to
right.
do this kind of thing.
Well, but then it also makes me think, we're talking about like inflation and stuff like that. This guy, I think, only lived to be like 68, which I know is like, for that kind of time frame, like being in your mid to late 20s, like it's not like it is now.
Yeah, he died of apoplexy, I believe it's called. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. It's APOPLEX, something. I don't know what exactly that
apoplexy, I think is what it is.
Yeah.
But like what I mean by that is like once upon a time, at least from what I was told, like people used to live to be like 40, 50, 60 or whatever. Like, so once you get like up in your 20s, a lot of times, even in like your late teenage years, people seem to be more grown up than they are now. So like, I mean, the fact that this guy is probably 26, like you said, moving and shaking with the right people, it's probably not unheard of, I guess, for some people to be like that, like in their late 20s and probably already have a family this guy didn't, so.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that as much as these mysterious brownies guided his business decisions, which seemed to be successful,
yeah,
he ended up basically broke.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when he died, I think his estate was worth $1,000. So you figure out what $1,000 back then would equates today.
Well, he died in 28?
Yeah.
1928? Let's see here. I have a feeling it's probably going to be a lot of money, or at least a pretty fair amount of money. Let's see.
Well, considering how much he was probably worth before.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
He seems to be kind of one of those guys that
wow,
was like...
I'm actually surprised.
How much?
Let's see. His total net worth was $17,000. If that was...
That's not a lot of money.
That's not a lot of money.
Not that you laying over 2,300 miles of rail line and owning, major rail companies and probably worth millions of dollars. To end up with basically $17,000
right
at the end of your life. But that's so funny that I find it strange that as much as he relied on these brownies or hunches or whatever, how eventually he would consider them, they never warned him about the downside.
There you go.
They never warned him about the downside. So
interesting.
Yeah, it's matter of fact, he reminds me of another guy that I think both of y'all may know who this is, but was Edgar Cayce.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that.
Edgar Cayce's another interesting guy that maybe one day we might use him as an historical figure to look at. I mean, he died, I think, in 1945, but he reminds me a little bit of I mean, he's not the industrialist that Arthur Stilwell was, but as far as this kind of spiritual dimension with his life, they're very similar. Matter of fact, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Okay. I think both of y'all probably know who he is. Mm-hmm. He said, after Arthur had passed away, that no living man has had the psychic experiences.
Wow.
Do you know that Doyle wrote Stilwell a letter?
No, I didn't.
Yes. I think in September of 1922, and I quote a letter, "My dear Stilwell." Now remember, this is a Brit. This is someone from Britain. Conan Doyle was from Britain. So their verbiage and terminology is a little different than ours. And Miranda, loving the British and being from Canada, she kind of hit me to some of that. She says, he says, "My dear Stilwell, I am full of sympathy, but it is simply impossible for me to fall into your brownie scheme. I have a full winter before me. Then if I get to America in April, I should start off from Chicago and carry on west, as I have not touched that ground. You and Randall would make a strong combination. Reverend Vale Owen comes out in January. I wonder if you could supplement him. There is expense and responsibility involved, and that's the crutch. I told Lloyd George about you, and he was interested in the plan. All remembrance to Mrs. Stilwell, yours, A. Conan Doyle."
Wow.
Now, y'all hear scheme, as I did, as in a con or some bullshit. Mm-hmm. But Miranda told me that scheme from the Brits is more of just a plan. It's not
there's no negative
connotation to a Brit using the word scheme.
Right.
So I took it like, oh my God, did he plan all this and bullshitting everybody?
Yeah.
And she said, no, that's just a plan. And so Sir Conan Doyle was a big figure from the spiritualist movement and all of this stuff.
Right.
And he's involved in all this. And then you said, he came up with that other quote.
Right.
This is deep shit.
Yeah, it is very deep. That's what I'm saying. I don't believe there would be another person like him until really, at least I'm aware of, is Edgar Cayce, who's also a very well-known figure who had a lot of psychic experiences and stuff like that. So, he's in rare company when it comes to this. But for him to be right, for as much as he did, there has to be something to it.
Sure.
I mean, nobody's that lucky all the time.
Well, it's not just one or two instances. This was numerous things that he did, and planting 40 towns that grew.
Right.
That's insane. That's, when you think about to lay those things out, how many towns didn't make it when other companies were laying railroads because they decided to go 10 miles to the north or to the south, and then it closed up this town and they had to move it over here. And he planted 40 towns and 2,500 miles of railroad.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
And then after he got booted from this Kansas City one, he wanted, like you stated, to go from one town all the way down to Mexico with another one.
Right, yeah. It was called I believe that one was, he wanted to go from Kansas City to the Pacific Ocean is what he wanted to do.
Yes, to the other side of Mexico.
And it was called the Kansas City, Mexico Orient Railway.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But, as I said, these were one of these Brownie-inspired projects. Unfortunately, it went into receivership due to financial issues, and part of those financial issues was tied to the Mexican Revolution in 1912.
Well, also that. And the person who got him out of the first financial thing, I forgot who it was. I heard this story from somebody else that was telling me this. The second time he ran into financial trouble, he went to go see this person. I think it was a friend of his father's who was very wealthy, who died the day he was supposed to get there.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So why didn't these brownies tell him to hurry up and get there a day sooner? But this man had already agreed to help him and had already planted money as seed money for his first railroad and was going to do the same for the second one because he saw the vision and the success that he could have and wasn't going to let him fall back into those dire straits, and then passed away the day he got there.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy how sometimes life just works.
Well, he said that these brownies would scout the future for him. Okay, what future are you scouting? You couldn't have told me the dude was going to die, you know?
Well, I guess
what do you think all these brownies are?
I don't know. That's the thing that's hard to wrap my head around is like he's saying hunches. I've had situations in my life where I felt like I've had that gut feeling where I'm like, this is it. But I've never been able to attribute it to like a fairy or like a brownie.
Well, I had a hunch that Jason would be great for the podcast, and it wasn't a brownie that told me that.
Right, but that's what I'm saying.
I had a hunch.
Like, but what,
yeah, and not only that, I brought Kobe Luwak to the podcast. So
what a great experience this is.
Yeah.
What a great foreshadow. What is not foreshadowing? Foresight.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Now, if I said it was brownies, I would think I was cuckoo.
That's right.
Maybe. Is that why he changed his answer? Well, he's like, no, it was hunches. Because everyone's
supposedly later in life, because he wrote some books.
Yeah.
And plays and
poems. Matter of fact, I've ordered one of them. I'm waiting for it to come in the mail because I want to read it. I really kind of want to get a deeper appreciation of his life and kind of everything that made him who he is.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, it was these brownies that urged him to marry his wife.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I also I read somewhere where he questioned these brownies why they were talking to him so much, and I believe I read where they indicated to him that he was just easier to talk to.
Wow.
He was more open. Or, I guess his antenna was tuned to the spirit world, whereas some people can hear these things and other people can't. I don't know.
Right.
I'm just kind of going by what I've kind of dug up on this guy. But the sad part about it, as I said, the guy ended up dying. I would think fairly young, but
right.
And then unfortunately his wife jumped out of a window 13 days later out of grief.
Yikes.
And killed herself. And even more mysterious, they were both cremated, and their ashes disappeared from the mortuary. There are no mortal remains.
I remember seeing that.
There is no mortal remains of these two individuals.
Wow.
They just disappeared. They don't know what happened to them.
And they didn't have any kids either?
They had no children.
Wow. What if it was like a give and take sort of thing? Not like a deal with the devil sort of thing, but what if it was like
the fairies of brownies came to collect?
Yeah.
Or
I'm saying like let's say hypothetically you meet with these brownies or these fairies or something, and there's this contract or this agreement of like, you can do this, we can like tell the future, you can get everything, but like there's like some stipulations that like may come to bite you in the butt later. Like being broke on your deathbed, and
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They gave him these hunches to do certain things, but they sure didn't warn him about some of the negative consequences that he incurred as a result of these decisions. Like they didn't give him warning of the people that would, in essence, stab him in the back.
I would like to say too, take a minute to chase a quick squirrel. When you're doing research on this guy and you see pictures of him and his wife and things like that, This cat knew how to rock a mustache, didn't he?
He did.
Oh my goodness.
He had that classic look.
Yes, he could rock a mustache. So
I think he's a very interesting figure. And I said there's probably a lot more to this guy. As I said, there are a lot of books, some books on him, and I highly encourage others to do some research on this guy. I think you might find it interesting.
The thing that is kind of rocking my brain right now is the fact that he died in 1928, and it's crazy to think that we're so close to that being 100 years ago. Like that's the part that's kind of like tripping me up right now. Is like
that's a good point.
I know that we are. I know that we're in 2023 currently right now, but it's just the idea of like, oh yeah, that was 100 years ago. It's
5 years away from 100 years.
Right. The fact that, again, I mean, I'm pretty sure people had the same idea whenever they were like in the early aughts, the teens of the 2000s, of like, oh yeah, there's like things that happened in like early 1900s that are 100 years ago now, which is like, it's crazy to think about that. Yeah. How time flies and I've said this on this show hundreds of times, probably ad nauseum, is how like the advancement of technology. We're talking about a guy here who like paved the way with railroad tracks, like to connect the greater part of the East Coast or sides of like the east side of America in a way. And now we're dealing with self-driving cars and how in your Tesla you can get a software download to where it can be fully self-driving now.
Yeah.
It can be.
Nikola Tesla would be proud.
You can get updates via a satellite and make your car improved in a way. I'm like, excuse me, I can't even fully wrap my head around that. And that's where we're at right now.
That's somebody who I'd like to talk about is Nikola Tesla.
Well, that may be another person we can
right.
Because there's nothing in this modern world that we have that we don't owe to him.
There's a whole bunch.
AC.
He was a.
Yeah, let's talk about him.
He was an interesting figure. Now
your cell phones, your motor, your electric, everything.
Oh. Even though he wanted to give free electricity to everybody, he didn't want to have yes. He wanted to give the world free electricity. That was his desire.
And now it's one of the most
regulated.
It's a hot commodity everywhere.
Hot commodity.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Now there's discussion on what's the best way to make power now. It's a big debate between,
Can you imagine, though, if we could have, somehow if that dream could have actually became reality and how the world would be different if we had free power?
I've had really deep conversations with people about like what would have happened if Chernobyl didn't go like melt down, and what would be different about people's perspective on nuclear, because there are so much misinformation and so much like fear mongering on nuclear power.
Well, they say if you took all the waste from every nuclear plant that has been gotten rid of or used up, it wouldn't even fill up a third of a football field right now.
Right.
From the first one on, it wouldn't even fill up a football field. So what's the fear about this?
Well, it's before Chernobyl, you had 3 Mile Island.
Oh yeah.
And that's I think just
that's what I'm saying. Is like
politically it just damaged the industry.
Yep. But the thing is,
we've never really recovered from it.
So for me, the conversation I was having was the idea of like how many years of like, because there's also, not only is it less waste, but there's like we have better ways of disposing of nuclear waste than we ever have before in the past. And like, but the thing is, like, no matter how many good things you put into nuclear power, there's nothing beneficial from burning coal and in any capacity ever. It's only bad things. And so like the conversation we had that I won't really get into now, or we can later if we want to, is the idea of, let's say hypothetically, like whenever we just kept bettering and bettering nuclear power, like what could like the environment look like today? Like if we, if we didn't, like ruin the atmosphere like so many years ago, or continue to perpetuate that bad cycle of, just continue to ruin the atmosphere.
I'm a firm believer that you need to utilize all forms of energy production.
Right.
And not necessarily exclude any. I think if you had more of a balanced approach to delivering power,
right? I guess that's all I mean.
I think
really.
you would have at least you'd have some redundancies there. You'd have some, like for example, what happened this couple winters and these plants. You don't have enough coal-fired plants that are delivering energy,
right?
And they're shutting down. People are freezing. I mean,
and it's the same thing with like solar power. I think solar and wind are great like supplemental ways. Like it may not be the only way, but it's like I think the whole reason why I'm saying is like I think it's the same mentality of everything's in ruin, and now we're going to try to fix everything, is what it feels like. There were some preventative stuff, I think, before that we could have done, and
because we're reactionary.
Exactly, right. And I'm not saying I have all the answers.
We react.
Exactly.
Precisely. We react, we don't plan.
Right. And right now it's that kind of idea.
I'm sorry to say it, we don't have brownies telling us what to do.
We don't have brownies.
we need brownies.
Joke's on you guys. I'm going to save the world. Okay.
Yes. So if anybody starts saying they have brownies they're talking to, I want to know about it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Especially about this podcast.
I mean,
that's right. I did have one. Hey.
You did.
Jason needs to join us.
There you go. So, was that a
brownie? He brought Kopi Luwak
on the show. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I used to listen to what I thought was the angel on my shoulder, but it turns out I was listening to the devil on the other side, who's just a good ventriloquist.
That's great.
Uh-huh. Well, I would like to say something today, because I have a feeling we're fixing to wind this down. You asked us how our week went.
Right.
And I would like to take a moment and say that today I buried my grandmother.
Oh.
And it's a sad day. She was 96.
Wow, what a long life.
She was an amazing lady. She loved our Lord Jesus Christ. And I would like to tell a quick story. It's one story that would tell everybody what they need to know about my grandmother.
Love it.
If that's okay with y'all.
Please do.
We all know we're from South Louisiana here.
Yeah.
My grandmother was born in Lake Charles, but kind of settled with my grandfather in Gonzales, Louisiana. And one day she called me up and she said, I just left the Kmart in Gonzales. That tells you how long ago this was, because I don't think we have any Kmarts left. And I said, okay, Grandma, what's up? You sound kind of upset. She says, well, when I got out of the car and started walking to the Kmart, I saw a man doing inappropriate things to himself as the women were walking back and forth to the Kmart. And I said, oh my goodness, Grandma, what did you do? She says, well, I went to my car. And I said, oh, good, you left. And she said, no, baby, I got my Bible. I said, what? Uh-oh. She said, I got my Bible, and I went right up to his car and started pounding on the window and beating on it and preaching the word of Jesus to him. And I said, Grandma, I carry a gun. I wouldn't have went up to his car. And she says, baby, I don't need your gun. I got my Jesus.
That's
and
powerful.
I said, what did he do? He says, baby, he couldn't handle Jesus, so he left burning rubber.
Mm-hmm.
And I told that story.
She freaked him out.
She freaked him out. The power of her spirit and her faith in Jesus, he left.
This guy sees this elderly lady banging on his...
I was asked, and I told, to speak today at the funeral, and I told that story. And here I'm going to tell a slightly inappropriate story at my grandmother's funeral, but I think she would have loved that I told that story. Because that was her. That was her wrapped up in a nutshell.
Story of her spirit.
And that was who she was. And thank y'all for letting me kind of put that for posterity, even long after I'm gone. This hopefully will still be on the
She will be
net.
in my prayers.
And now I know that. And she loved to play the auto harp. And now she's at Jesus' feet playing the auto harp with him and doing a lot better than we are.
Oh, yes.
So thank you both for letting me tell that story.
Absolutely.
That's crazy.
We're sorry for your loss, Tony.
Yeah. That's even...
I went to my uncle Pete, and I said, Uncle Pete, I said, I'm not sad.
Yeah.
I feel bad, then I'm not sad. And he said, I'm not either. He said, I said my goodbyes and I know where she is. And he said, she wouldn't want you sad either.
Right.
So it was okay.
It's that scenario that I feel like we all, I mean, I don't want to speak for everyone. And I feel like a majority of people would probably like is have a long life with family around you, to have raised people and to have taught and to have loved and to have lived a full life. And then at the end, to be able to go in peace in some way. At least that's what I hope.
Sure.
And like that's great.
That's
lovely. But yeah. Well,
thank you guys.
Oh, no problem.
I appreciate that.
Like I said, it's appreciations all around. I appreciate you sharing the story. I appreciate the coffee. I mean, what a great episode this was.
Yes, it was fun.
What a fun time.
Yeah.
But if for any of those out there that have any suggestions, have any people you want us to talk about, or any topics that you want to hear us talk about, you can reach out to us at Facebook /Retrospect Pod, or you can go to Linktree /Retrospect Pod as well and see all the different platforms that we're on, or all the different ways that you can communicate with us. But anyways, until next time, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone. God bless.
Peace.